All right, time to go back to the Stallone zone. Yeah. Winner takes it all, loser takes the fall. When I step in to that Drumdums evil lair, it's like a part of me goes away, and it's go time. So then I take my hat and I turn it like this. And from that moment on, I'm a freaking machine. I'm a review machine. Over the top, baby. Let's do this. Over the Top stars Sylvester Stallone, David Mendenhall, Robert Loggia, and is directed by Menaham Golan. You know, there's just something about Stallone in the 80s. I don't know what it was. There was just this like perfect storm of like charisma and just machismo and all this great stuff that just made him like the leading man of the day. Really, he was kind of like the Tom Cruise of his day. And Over the Top is such an interesting choice for him. Like, I think he's the only guy that could have taken on a role about arm wrestling and fatherhood and made it work. I don't think any other actor could have done it. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into this one. Let's talk about Over the Top. Now, guys, first off, this will be a Patreon requested review. One of my Patreon patrons, Beth S., she requested this one. I believe she said this is like one of her favorite movies. And it's a coincidence because Over the Top is one of my favorite Stallone movies. Now, I'd say most people are like Schwarzenegger fans. You know, like out of all the big action stars, they choose Schwarzenegger. I'm a Stallone fan. The guy was almost like a father figure to me growing up. He was like my idol. I was such a Rocky fan, a Rambo fan. I used to watch the movies with my father and my family, and it was just such a great experience. And Schwarzenegger, of course, I love Schwarzenegger to death, but Stallone has my heart. You know what I mean? Like all the other action stars, they're just fun to me, but Stallone, there's another dimension there. Like, I don't think Schwarzenegger could have taken on a role like Rocky for obvious reasons, but also I think Stallone is a better actor. Like, Stallone's a really underrated actor, I think. And he's chosen some really bad roles. But when he shines, he really shines. I mean, there's a reason why the guy was nominated for an Oscar for Creed. He was really a great actor. But I'm looking forward to getting into Over the Top. Why this movie is still being talked about, I guess sometimes laughed at to this day, but lovingly laughed at. You know, I think there's a lot of bad movies that came out of the 80s that are laughed at and nobody's talking about them. But Over the Top has something there. There's something there that keeps people coming back. And I gotta admit, every time I watch this movie, it almost brings a tear to my eye. It is heartfelt. It is touching. I do remember, because when this movie came out, I was a child, or I was a teenager. And so I connected with all those little life lessons that went on along the way. Lincoln Hawk's son has a great character arc in this movie. You know, set aside the silly arm wrestling and all that stuff and the macho syndrome that you got going. This story has a lot of heart to it. But first, let's get into the plot. Oh, and I wore this getup for a reason because it's kind of like a Lincoln Hawk's getup. I even have a Lincoln Hawk t-shirt, but I couldn't find it. But I think this is even better. I even have suspenders, but I didn't feel like throwing them on. But Over the Top stars Sylvester Stallone. He plays Lincoln Hawk. He is a trucker and his wife is dying of cancer. Him and his wife are not together anymore. They've been separated or divorced for, you know, the last 10 years. He hasn't seen his son in 10 years. So in this movie, he goes to the military school to pick up his son, Michael. And funny enough, his son's real name would be Mike Hawk. Put those together, it's kind of funny. But really, this is a father-son story. The rest of this movie, these two are together in this truck, and Michael Cutler is getting to know his father throughout this. Living life on the road. This is a life that's much different than his normal life. He is a child from a very wealthy family. His grandfather, Jason Cutler, played by Robert Loggia, is really controlling over him and wants to keep him separated from Lincoln Hawk. And I guess you can kind of understand where he's coming from as a grandfather because he doesn't trust Lincoln Hawk. He lives the life of a trucker, which isn't the best life. or at least in his eyes. But the first thing I want to talk about is what I like to call life lessons. Specifically the character Michael, Lincoln Hawk's son in this movie. This is the character arc throughout. Lincoln Hawk doesn't really have much of a character arc. He's still himself at the end of the movie. But because of who he is, he changes his son. His son starts off the movie hating him because of everything he's been told. And so throughout this, one thing I loved about it was all those little life lessons along the way, like when Lincoln Hawk was teaching him how to drive the truck, which was really fun. When Michael sees his father in action in that first arm wrestling match. And I think that was the perfect way to set this thing up, because at face value, when you hear that Lincoln Hawk is an arm wrestler, you're thinking, where do you go with that? You know, how do you make that interesting? And that first scene, that first arm wrestling scene really does a great job of building that intensity and showing that this guy really takes this job seriously, as silly as it sounds. There's a lot of money to be made, and as soon as he turns the cap, it's business time, it's go time. And there's kind of your first life lesson right there. Sometimes in life, you have to flip the switch. You know, you have to do things that normally you would think you couldn't do. But really the biggest life lesson in this movie is when Lincoln Hawk takes his son to this store, and he wants to put his son to the test. You know, you think what I'm doing is silly? Let's see you put your money where your mouth is. And he has him actually arm wrestle another child. And, you know, they do a 2 out of 3 match. And when he does the first time, of course, he loses. Then they go outside, and then Stallone has a father-son talk with his son.
I don't care what your grandfather thinks about me, okay? All I care about is you. Now, you lost back there because you beat yourself. You let yourself get beat. I know you can do it. You're a special kid. You're my boy, do you understand? But you're also a spoiled, rich brat who's always had everything done for him. Now it's time to do for yourself, Mike, and you can do it. Because I'm telling you, the world meets nobody halfway. Do you understand what that means? If you want it, Mike, you gotta take it.
I think this first little speech that he gives his son is so important to the movie. It really is what the movie is all about. You know, the world meets nobody halfway. If you want it, you got to take it. That's something that comes back into the fold at the end of the movie, and it flips. When Michael tells his father, you're thinking everything's against you right now. There's no way that you're going to beat Bull Hurley. But you have to flip that switch. You have to tell yourself, no, losing is not an option. I have to do this. And that's what works so well about this movie. That's the message that you get out of it. And I think that's why it hits you in the feels when it's over. Now, this was a Canon Films movie. There's a documentary on Netflix right now that I think I've watched more than any other documentary I've ever seen. And it's the Canon Films documentary. Electric Boogaloo is what it's called, because that was the title of one of Canon Films movies, Breaking 2 Electric Boogaloo. But they talk about Over the Top. And Over the Top is ironically what sent them over the edge, pretty much, because they invested all their money into Stallone. And Stallone himself didn't think this movie was going to do nothing. He said they just kept throwing money at him, and eventually he had to take it. And the funny thing is, all the filmmakers, all the actors in the movie, nobody took the movie seriously. Everybody thought this is something I don't want on my resume. And it didn't do well at the box office at all. But then it became a video hit. As soon as it came out on VHS, people just started renting the movie like crazy. And it's one of those movies that people still talk about constantly. You know, it has like a cult following. And I am one of those fans. I love Over the Top. Now, putting aside all that life lesson stuff, this is a pretty entertaining damn movie. I've already talked about the first arm wrestling match, but that last arm wrestling match is freaking insane. The thing is set in Vegas. You got the music that's just constantly building throughout. You got Stallone putting it all on the line. And it's funny how every person that Lincoln Hawks has to arm wrestle, they play with the scene a little bit differently. Like one of them, he beats the guy like super quick. And another one, you got the guy that's drinking motor oil, which is really hilarious.
Right, mister. Get him off of my God! Spider, you keep your arm on the gun! I don't see it! Get your arm on that! Got one back! See it! Go! One of many favorites this place.
But, you know, that last match with Bull Hurley is a hell of a contender. This guy was like third in line for the part too. But I can't think of anybody that would have been a better foe for Stallone to go against in this movie. Just not by his size, but also just how tough he sounds. He is really intimidating. And there's just this constant buildup between him and Lincoln Hawk throughout the whole movie. So by the time they do come together and arm wrestle, it's pretty damn exciting.
Oh, what a move by Bull Hurley! He has hit back over the Big Hurley's in trouble. Hurley's in big trouble. He's going down! He's going down! Like a shit. He's putting everything hesitant. He's coming back. He's coming back. This match is unbelievable.
Also, Jason Cutler, played by Robert Loggia. Robert Loggia does a great job. He's one of those actors in the 80s, and he acted in like the 90s and 2000s too. But in the 80s, it seems like that's when he got like most of his bigger roles. And he's an interesting character because you really don't like the guy. He's a complete jerk throughout the whole movie. But you can still understand where he's coming from. I mean, every action that he is taking is out of love. He's not like a Dr. Evil type of villain that wants to take over the world. No. He's got a stake in this just like Lincoln Hawks does. He wants Michael Cutler to stay with him. He wants to protect him. So I thought that was interesting. And finally, you got to talk about the music in this movie, especially the Kenny Loggins song, Meet Me Halfway, which was just infectious. It went with the film very well. I know that Stallone behind the scenes said he would have went with just a straight up like score instead of rock songs, because you got the Winner Takes It All song. But you know what, I think for the 80s, I think that music worked great for this movie actually. I don't think it would have worked as well if they would have went with just more of a dramatic score. And I know a lot of the people behind the scenes hate this movie, but I love it. I love Over the Top for what it is, warts and all, and I have a blast with it. I could go into a cons section that could be 30 minutes long. Let's face it, okay? And I think those cons are glaring about this movie. It's not a perfect movie at all. There are some things to make fun of in this movie. I don't think I have to go through all of them. A lot of the characters in this movie are really over the top. But hey, that's okay. That's kind of the charm to the movie. So I'm definitely giving this a purchase worthy. It's one of my favorite Stallone movies. It's one of those that I just constantly find myself throwing in. I actually had the VHS of this. And during my move, I ended up losing like, I want to say maybe like half a dozen VHS tapes, like my Halloween 6 VHS tape, Over the Top, and especially my Splatter University. That's really eating me up inside. I can't believe I lost my Splatter University VHS. So I was going to make this a VHS review, but I couldn't find the tape, so I couldn't watch it. So it's just a straight up review. But thank you, Beth S., for requesting this. This is one that I actually wanted to get to eventually anyway. I love Stallone. And I still have 2 Rocky reviews to do, and I still want to do like 3 of the Rambo movies. I've done Rambo 4. But yeah, I want to go through like a lot of Stallone's catalog. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So anyway, guys, post in the comments what you thought of Over the Top. Looking forward to hearing them. I know a lot of people on Instagram, when I posted a picture of it, they were like, yes, love this movie. So it's got a lot of fans out there. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day. And on Fridays, we do Free For All Fridays. Follow me at Drumdums on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and now Stardust. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and Drumdum out. And he plays the ultimate asshole in just about everything he does. But there's also a little bit behind the asshole